Hello, everyone, and hello, Rhiah. This is such an honor to have you on the podcast today. Um, let's start with having you say a little something about yourself.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here. I am an emerging poet. I've been a poet for all of my life, and I just published my first book of poetry, which I consider a crystallization of my own lived experiences through everyday words. And I really approached it from the perspective of like marinating in my own life lessons and putting words to them.
Mm.
So it's really been like a love letter to myself and to humanity around some of the words that we use every day that we don't even think about and take for granted. And it's just for me, it was an opportunity to sink in a little more deeply into the experiences in life that are life-giving and that offer a sense of expansion and a compass to move towards and lean into. And I find in life, as well as with writing, there's always polarities with how we live and experience things. And it's natural for us to be expanding and contracting all of the time. It's part of the natural phase of growth. And in words that we use every day, and I'll just give you an example like guilt, there can be a lot of negative connotations about how we think of guilt and then start to associate in our bodies to the word guilt or emotionally to the word guilt. And some of these words can actually serve to be very empowering guideposts to our emotional life, to our emotional intelligence. And so writing this book for me was an ode to giving voice to all that's unvoiced in the emotionality that we live and breathe every day and sometimes don't always acknowledge.
Oh,
So that's
that's beautiful.
thank
That
you.
was like medicine.
Mm,
And thank you so much again for sending me a copy of the book. I had a chance to read it before our interview, and
mm,
it felt like quenching a thirst that I didn't even know I had. Like I just devoured
mm.
it, and it felt so just, I don't know, it filled me up.
Oh, I'm so delighted to hear that. Thank you.
Hmm.
Yeah. In what ways do you feel it filled you up? If you could pinpoint one or two uh, ways in which you felt nourished, if I'm hearing you
Yeah,
correctly.
that's
Yeah.
perfect. That's a perfect word. And that word just keeps coming up actually. So that's interesting that we bring that
Yeah.
up today. It's a little nice synchronicity.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm always reading something that is there's an outcome, like this was such a pleasure to read and it felt a lot of them resonated so well to me with me and my experiences. Um, they were just refreshing. It was very refreshing.
Mm. Oh, I'm so glad. I
Yeah.
really wanted to write. I wanted to write in a way where the reader could feel like there is no work to do
Yeah.
because I feel as someone myself who's been deeply immersed in personal growth for decades, there is a point and a junction at which we become exhausted, right, from the mindset of continually focusing on ourselves with the mindset of, oh, there's always something more to do to grow or to heal or to be in order to be the like quote marks best version of ourselves. And
Yeah.
so I really approached the reflections that are included in this book with a sense of like, oh, they're just really soft whispers that we already know.
Hmm.
And I feel for myself when I revisit those soft whispers, of things that I know and that I've learned, they just help me to settle in my body without doing anything. And I think
Mm.
that's one of the keys of like it being effortless,
Yeah.
right? Because there's so much that we have that we're always doing, bringing to life, manifesting. I'm sure you, as a mother of three, know this more than anyone. So being
Well,
able
and
to
like,
into ourselves and just be have gentle reminders that we already know. I feel like that was part of my intention
well,
to voice to the congruence that we can feel settled inside.
well, your intention was definitely felt on my end. Like you
Oh,
said,
good.
the marinating, that is another really good descriptive word for how I felt while reading it. It was just, yeah, there's nothing to do. We
Yes.
can just marinate in it. And
Yeah.
yeah, there's so much truth in so many different lines. It's you also have a lot of beautiful artwork in here. So I felt really bad dog-earing pages, but I have to do that because
You're allowed.
oh, but yeah, there was so many pages that I dog-eared. I had to figure out a way to dog-ear an extra way so that I could really save some of my favorites. Do you have a favorite
Oh,
book?
I, I have favorites at certain times, and at this point in time, what I'm most connecting with personally is the sense of I have a poem called Love, and that was a very I toggled back and forth whether I would even include that poem because I feel that love, perhaps out of any other word, has such dimensionality to it. And there's also so many associations that we all have in terms of like romantic love or familial love, what it means to love ourselves. And I feel that those understandings change as we change all the time. So it's a very dynamic um, expression of ourselves. But I've been really thinking a lot about love lately because, from my perspective, love is not something we do and it's not something we give. It's just something that we are.
Ooh, that's good.
It's
Mhm.
that simple, right? And so in that frame, there is nothing to do, and there is also nothing to do in our interpersonal relationships. Like we get to enjoy ourselves just being that love and enjoy someone else enjoying us in our love and being love.
Yep.
And when I think about every aspect of my life from that lens, it disintegrates and dissolves every single expectation or role or sense of
Obstacle.
need to or should. And it also allows for, again, like that sense of just being
Mhm.
to flourish within us, where we don't need to do more, earn more, say more, express more, create more in order to be love. And so for me, at this particular moment in time on this day, um, I am very connected to that poem. And there's a line in, or one of the definitions that I have for the word love in my book is love requires, oh, I don't often memorize my own poetry, but
I can look
it's
it up
something like
too.
love is a vehicle that requires no destination. That's what it is. That
Yeah.
is right.
I think I underlined that part. I gotta
It's a
look it up now too.
vehicle that requires no destination. And for me, the paradox in that is that the more we lean into the love that we already are, into the light that we already are, it goes somewhere. But we can't see where it's going. We don't know where it's going, and we don't need to know. We don't need to know where that's going to take us just by being ultimately the light and love that we are. And the other line in my book is, or definition of love is the light that we are.
Yeah. Beautiful.
And right. And so I think for a lot of us who are in this curiosity and a lot of us who have this hunger to be connected with ourselves and be connected with the world through that deep connection with ourselves.
Mhm.
It's it's so much about just baking and basking and marinating and leaning into that essence that we are effortlessly. And it's so much easier said than done. And the lines in that definition feel so simple to me. And yet, in the simplicity, there is this vast possibility of what we can become when we just be the love that we are. So
Yeah.
that's the one that's speaking to me the most at
Oh,
this point in time.
well, that was beautiful. Um, yeah, we overcomplicate everything. We
Mm,
really, really do. And everything you just said right now, we don't need to make it any more complicated than we are. Love is the light within us, just like you said. That is so beautiful. And if we just take a little bit of that wisdom throughout our day, I mean, it will it will nourish us. It will help us get through the day in such a different way, such a more expansive way.
absolutely. And it really is about being, right? And moving just a moment at a time away from doing and shifting into being.
Yeah.
And it can be such a simple shift. I had a moment earlier today where I've been offering a giveaway of my book on
Ooh.
Instagram.
Hmm.
And so I was doing I choose someone randomly. And the way I do that is I close my eyes, I connect with of what I connect with is my inner light or essence. I closed my eyes and I just scrolled my my thumb through all of the names who entered. And that was a way for me of being shifting into the being. Like there's nothing for me to do or to nothing for me to figure out if I just connect with um that that essence within me and let life do the choosing for me, if you will.
Right.
And and that just felt like such a great metaphor because often in my days, I do have a very focused intention for what I would like to create or um, do in my day. And sometimes those lists, like I'm sure many of your listeners relate, like we have our lists of the things that we want to do, and the internal pressure that those lists can create just from knowing, oh, I've got this to do, I want to do that, I need to do this, or whatever words we attach to the intentions of to-dos we've set for ourselves. And so I look for those moments. I really look for those moments where I can unhook from the doing and just be in the being a little more and more and more.
So much more happiness in that state.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel that there's that happiness in for me at least. I'd love to hear what it is for you, how you relate to happiness of being in the moment and not needing to do or being connected in our brains around the doing. For me, it's when I connect with the thought that there's nothing to do, then I feel my stomach relaxes. I feel the peace. And with the peace, there's a spaciousness inside. And then I'm like, oh, I can feel happy. So that's
Yeah.
how it looks for me. I'm curious, how is it for you when you um
Well, I really, that all really resonates with me right now with having a new baby at home. And,
Yeah.
there's this spring energy coming
Mhm.
and this, okay, I've been at home a lot. I need to do something. I have a lot of creative projects building up in me. And when you live in the frame of mind where I have all this to do and I make lists and, um, I don't have time to do this or that, instead of recognizing the beautiful place that I am in at right now, where I'm home with baby. We are soaking up every little second of our time together and every baby snuggle. And like you said, the weight is just lifted off your shoulders and you're more, um, you settle in to that presence so much more and you feel more expansion. And then it just like attracts all these amazing, beautiful things to you.
It really does. I was so grateful earlier today when we connected the first time, and
Mhm.
I was privy to being able to see you connect with your baby, and I just wanted to bask in it. I want to fill the space with words because it was so precious. I saw your connection so relaxed and peaceful, and that also gave me peace.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it was like a beautiful, unexpected medicine. So thank you
Mm,
for that. Thank
mm,
you for
absolutely. Well, thank you for being so understanding and witnessing that. Um, like we said before we hit record, we don't always know what the meaning is for unexpected things to come up. And when we live in flow and we allow ourselves to be surprised by life and surprised by whatever comes our way, just more abundance flows to us, more joy flows to us. And when we're trying to control and when we get mad when things don't work out, if I were to get mad, because Elsie literally started crying as soon as I hit record. um, if I would have been upset with that, I mean, what that doesn't do anybody any good. So,
yeah. And it's also, you said it so beautifully around this notion of letting go of control. And that's another poem in my book is surrender. And one of my
mm,
definitions for surrender is that it is a daily supplement,
oh,
because
yeah,
how many moments do we have like that where we are expecting, what we've shown up for and what we've committed to and what others have shown up to and committed to unfold a certain way. And then when it doesn't, there's like this micro moment of surrender. And when it does happen, not only, as you said so beautifully, that it brings in this sense of flow, so there's more spaciousness, which brings abundance. There's also this element of discovering what we don't know. Like
yeah,
we don't know, maybe this point in time when we connect, there's a reason that we don't know, that we can't see, that's just going to support our conversation beyond what we could know at that time.
yes.
And so I really, as we were talking about just before you hit record, embracing this notion of a pivot, a reorientation with I was going to say swift, but it doesn't need to be a swift kind of refiguration, but with an immediate kiss with surrender,
Mm,
it just can offer so much to us. And uh, I'm more and more and more in my life when there's a change of plans, even if it's something I'm really looking forward to. And then there's a pivot. I'm noticing how the pivot brought gifts that I never could have imagined.
mm.
So
Yeah,
I'm
we are always thinking
curious.
we know better. And we always think that yeah, if we control, the situation to the last and final detail, that it's going to make us happy. And it's so the opposite in my experience.
Absolutely. Yeah, mine as well. Absolutely. It reminds me of a text I received from a friend this morning, and she wrote, "It's amazing." She couldn't get like something technically to work, and so she was looking for like the right link to do what she wanted to do, and it wasn't coming easily. And then she wrote to me, "It's amazing what happens when our brains think that we're missing something that we're not." And she said when she shifted back into the frame of mind, like the reason for doing what she was doing was to express appreciation. And then she found it immediately. So it's like the energy that we hold towards something just can change our circumstances, or it doesn't necessarily change the circumstances, but it changes our experience,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, reframing,
Yeah.
pivoting. I love the word pivoting and I love the word surrender. Surrender was my word of the year last year,
Mhm.
and it just feels so, it's another nourishing word, like to let go. I think before for me, and when I say before, I mean like before I started working on myself really in the personal development end of things, I thought control was the answer. I was very rigid with a lot of things, a lot of areas in my life. And I held myself apart from so many amazing opportunities, so many amazing relationships, and such an amazing experience.
Mm. Mm. It's such a profound shift to make, even
Yeah.
to realize, I think, in the ways that we're controlling that we don't always realize.
Hmm.
And just threading back to the theme for me, which was very alive today, was love and self-love. And what does self-love look like to me in this season of life? And so that aspect of seeing the very subtle ways in which there's still a mechanism inside that wants to control something, even if it's under the banner of love, actually. And for example, um, wanting to manage, I think this is something we can probably all relate to, your listeners as well, is when we have a delicate truth that we want to express to a loved one. And then there can be a sense of feeling responsible for their feelings and wanting to take care of their feelings. And I've been noticing in myself lately around this topic of control that I'm pretty good now with being able to know and name what I feel and being able to express what I feel to a loved one. And yet, there are certain moments where I'll catch myself with needing to come up with a solution, like an alternative situation that will put their feelings at ease because I've come up with a solution, instead of being in that vulnerability of simply saying, "I feel disconnected from you right now, and I don't know what to do." Instead of taking on that job or that role that I self-assign myself, which isn't my job. And I think, so many of us, especially as women, we can tend to
Yeah.
do that because we are, many of us are so attuned to our emotions and empathy and have compassion for the other in front of us. And so it's been a really interesting theme that I've been noticing in myself on that topic of control. And um, I am just, I'm really amazed with you as a mother of three. And I'm sure you have multiple stories around letting go of control in this juncture in your life.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah, children will definitely do that. Well, and actually, you don't know this, but Elsie, my youngest, she was a surprise. Um, we didn't know that Benjamin, my fiance, was able to have children. So it was totally off our radar. I went to the doctor and found out at the doctor. Yeah,
Major pivot.
major pivot, but it
Major
was
pivot.
such a blessing. And it's like you take that news in and it just kind of hits you like, whoa, my life is totally going to change here. This is not expected. And um, but then it takes like a nanosecond to just witness the blessing that is
Mm.
that is happening and that has happened. And yeah, my poor doctor, the day of my appointment, she got to witness all of my shock and awe, and um, it was a beautiful moment though. Like she actually ended up being in my delivery room.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So um, that was amazing that we ended up having her as our delivery midwife, and that's exactly what I wanted to happen. But you can't schedule those things. So
Wow.
um,
What a
she
gift.
such a gift. And she has said to me, I will never forget you. Like, yeah, I'll never forget you either.
Pure surprise. Pure
Yeah.
surprise. And
39
then,
years old and having a baby.
wow, congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, congratulations on the huge surrender.
Hmm.
On this topic, what more grand of an example could you have of surrender into the gifts that life gives?
Yeah.
And so unexpected, while you are literally giving life to another being
Mhm.
and embracing that. I bow down to the there's such a I'm searching for the word right now. It's a combination between grace and ultimately such a huge trust in life to
Yeah.
receive and surrender in that way.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I just realized this now, but how interesting is it that Elsie came into my life the year that I declared surrender was my year or my word of the year.
Was it?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's interesting.
There you go. You got
Mhm.
it.
Didn't
Life is
realize that till
delivered
just
in
now.
spades, apparently.
What's that?
Life delivered in spades,
Yeah,
apparently.
absolutely.
Surrender. I witnessed my sister, who has four kids. She had her fourth that was unplanned and unexpected, and her plate was super full at the time. Like she was living in another country with her family, learning a new language. She ran her own business in a different country. It was just, you can imagine, all of her kids were under 8 years old at
Ooh.
the time. So super, super huge surprise and big surrender. And what I witnessed in her that was really lovely was this sense of deep relaxation with her fourth child that just wasn't available in the first three because and this is so natural in family systems. My background beyond writing is in trauma release and in family constellations where we engage with the dynamics of family systems and unconscious patterns that we hold.
Oh, wow. That sounds like a whole nother podcast
Oh,
episode.
it's deep. It's deep, girl. I can go there with you anytime. I love
Absolutely.
it's one of my it's one of the modalities that changed my life profoundly. It goes beyond the mind and it's really work that transforms on a soul level. And so I
Oh,
feel so grateful that it came into my life. But what I wanted to say around the family system is that, first of all, I got to witness in my sister her being so relaxed. And my sister, there's three of us, and she's the youngest. And so I knew from my own experience of being a middle child and seeing her as the youngest. By the time my parents had her, they were much more relaxed. Like they weren't
yeah.
trying to figure out as much how to be parents and are we doing this right? And that kind of pressure that is so natural in parents to have. And then the children can take that on too and
Yep.
feel, like they take on a little more responsibility than what is truly theirs
Mhm.
in the role of a child in the older positions. So that was the only bookmark that I wanted to tie to family systems. So coming back to this gift, especially of a child who's come later, it's not the first child that comes as a surprise or the second, but a third or a fourth. And that to me is an even, it's an even bigger surrender because the plate is so full, but there's also an even greater relaxation where everybody benefits.
I that 100% resonates with me.
Mm,
I also had a very full plate, not only with two kids, my own business, managing my dad's estate. Like that was a really heavy time in my life. And I feel like God brought me that news to really slow me down
mm,
and remind me to trust and surrender and
mm,
remind me what's really important.
mm. How beautiful you took it that way too. I think there are a lot of people who are not able to.
Yeah.
How did you see if you don't mind, I'm so curious, how did you see your life change as a result of that surrender when you realized that it was, or you had the understanding that you were being urged to slow down, urged to surrender, urged to have faith in life?
I think it all came at the perfect time in my life. If that would have been 10 years earlier, 5 years earlier, I wouldn't have been ready for it.
Mhm.
Um, but having just lost my dad, like that really anchored me.
Mm,
And then it kind of got more chaotic. And then finding out I was pregnant was just another reminder and another anchor. And it was, yeah, just allowing myself to zoom out
mm,
and witness,
mm,
you know, witness myself getting worried about the little things that I had to be taking care of that really aren't important at the end of the day.
mm.
They're not going to matter in 5, 10 years.
Yeah.
But here's this blessing of having a third baby come along, and
Mhm.
this is what you really need to be focusing your attention on. And having older children,
Mhm.
you know, my youngest is 12. Emma will be 14 here in a couple of weeks. You realize how fast childhood goes when they get to this age, right? And you're like, oh, just slow down a little bit because it just like a snap of the finger, they're all of a sudden going to be going into high school and talking about saving for cars and you're at basketball tournaments and whatever. So it's like the perfect time of life where you can really appreciate, okay, this time around, this is the last time I'm going to do this, and I really need to soak it all up. And then
Mm.
also the blessing of witnessing my older two and how they interact with Elsie is
Mm.
so incredible. Honestly, my biggest fear was that they would be upset with me.
Oh, wow.
Older kids, like, oh, my mom is pregnant, like what? But they have been so amazing, so helpful, and they bonded with her right away. So it's
Oh,
just, I feel so blessed in so many ways.
yes. It really resonates for me what you mentioned about timing and how the design of your life in that moment really facilitated your ability and capacity to embrace such a huge change and to embrace the life-giving quality, like literally life-giving qualities of having
Yeah.
a child. And I find this also in my own life where, you know, and for you, it happened very literally where you lost your father and then gave birth. I mean, those are such opposite ends of the spectrum, both of them so awakening.
Mhm.
And so both can be very confronting,
Mhm.
right? About what really matters.
Yeah.
And so to be hit from those two angles really, really speaks to me and how powerful that is and what a powerful passage that was to go through. And I find a lot in my own life where there's something that's dying, and it might not be a person, but it might be a relationship or it might be a way of being, that the way through always is to lean into what is life-giving.
Mhm.
And I had an epiphany around this when I had ended a long-term relationship and I went to Spain for a month and I was by myself on a farm in the Andalusia Mountains. And
Oh,
it was
wow.
beautiful. I was steeped in nature, and my intention for the whole month that I was there by myself, like literally the town even was a half-hour walk to get to. So it was effort for me to get to be around people and civilization. But every morning I woke up and I made myself my coffee and I went to sit in the garden and I just observed nature. And there were these flowers that hung from the awning of the deck, the little terrace that I had in my Airbnb. And I watched them every day turn their faces towards the sun.
Ooh.
So when there's shade, when there's something that's dying, they don't lament over a petal that they're shedding. They're simply turning their faces towards the sun.
Mhm.
And your story reminds me of that embodied in a very human sense. I mean, that's such a profound example of that.
That is such a beautiful comparison. I love that. Yeah, it really
Yeah,
was quite a year.
imagine.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's this one of the other definitions I have for surrender is um, knowing that grief is only a measure for the amount that we've loved.
I underlined that word or that line.
You
Mhm.
remember that one?
Yes,
Oh,
I love that.
mm,
So true.
so true. It's
Mhm.
not even, I think that it's so easy to associate loss and lament in our lives. But when we can really understand that grief is a measure for how alive we can be and for how much we can love, um, it really changes things. And I had a lot of realizations about that in my own life in terms of relationships that ended. And I realized that while I love these people so dearly and we shared so much together, that that love that I got to exchange and experience with them in some ways was at the cost to myself. And that's why we ended up parting ways, because I could no longer be at, for some time, early on in the relationship, they were all things I was fine with. And then I changed.
Yeah.
So in
Yeah.
order to keep growing, the things that I was originally okay with, I was not okay with anymore. And in that recognition where I could see that my new self had grown to the point where I could no longer pay the price that I was okay with paying before,
Mhm.
there's a grief in the thought or notion like I wasted all that time of not honoring myself or not, knowing that I was, paying that price.
Mhm.
And for me, that's where grief can kind of change its name to forgiveness, in that doorway where we can see the opening of how our old self was accepting of things in a way that went against ourselves in some way without us even knowing. And then being able to just make that gentle shift over into forgiveness, where we can acknowledge that we couldn't see then what we can see now. And then there's a liberation. That's a little bit how I experienced it. And I'm relating this obviously to a very different situation than the loss of a family member.
Mhm. But it's a beautiful, beautiful way. I think we've all felt that. We've all beat ourselves up for wasting a bunch of time in the wrong relationship. So you have such a beautiful way to describe things and make sense of things. That
Mm.
is, I've never thought of it that way, but that is so, yeah, that's grief too, when you're letting go of a relationship that you thought was once something that is no longer filling you up or no longer the relationship you want to be in.
Or wanting to believe that it was something that it just wasn't.
Mm,
Yeah.
yep.
A lot of my work, I mean, I have a love for words, as you can tell from my book. But
Yes.
I've been working on a memoir for several years, and it keeps on morphing. But the um, one of the things that I'm really excited about in this memoir is that I create new words, so new vocabulary
Mm.
for moments of awareness that
Mm.
we have relationally, where we're not always aware we're doing something until we're aware that we're doing something. Like, the hooks that can keep us kind of um, in a mode of dismissing ourselves or abandoning ourselves, or not honoring ourselves in some way. And so this this kind of giving voice to new vocabulary has been really satisfying, because it's allowed me to give voice to these connections where I believe, and in my experience, everything comes down to our relationship with ourselves, whether it's a, intimate with relationship with a partner, a friend, a relationship to our work, to making money, everything,
Yes.
everything, everything. So for me, it's been such an important, well, it's been the only thing that really, matters. If we want to see change outside of ourselves, it's got to be an inside job. And
Yeah.
from what I've heard of many of your interviews, you have a similar perspective.
Hmm.
Um, So yeah, just back to this, like, it's the satisfaction that it has been as a writer to give voice to new words that speak to aha moments, right? Moments of awareness that really, if we're going to embody them, it helps if we have life experience to go through them. But I do feel that language can offer a doorway through to an aha moment by naming something that we might not have been able to see before, such as with the word um, gaslighting, which really was not commonly used 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And then, I think it was probably 10 years ago, it started to become more into common language, and people were identifying with it and saying, like, hey, I'm not crazy. This person is flipping the switch and making it seem like this is my fault somehow when I was expressing how I feel or whatever was happening.
Mhm.
And so giving a new vocabulary to moments like that where we can have the awareness for ourselves is kind of one of my passions.
I love that. Do you have one to share?
Oh, I definitely could. It's on my computer if you wouldn't mind waiting for just a
No,
moment.
that's fine. Spring that on you, but that sounds like it's so much fun. I love the aha moments, and I love how you said when we put language to things, it brings new awareness. I think that's why I think that's part of the reason why I enjoyed your book so much. Just hearing, I don't know, it just kept feeling like I actually wrote it down in the back so I wouldn't forget it, even though it just kept coming back up. Thirst quenching, a thirst I didn't know I had, nourishingly romantic and
Oh,
soul food.
uh,
I wrote
nourishing
those other ones.
romantic. That is such a unique description that I've never heard before. In your definition of romantic, because I believe we all have our own, what
Mm.
would that
Ooh, that's tough.
be?
Well, I guess when I wrote down nourishingly romantic, it was more of a romanticism like with the relationship with myself, not necessarily
Mm.
like I'm reading a romance novel, not that kind of romance, but um, yeah, it just it was so good.
I get this image of like you courting yourself in a way. Um it's really precious. Yeah,
Yeah,
I love the image. Thank you for that reflection. I've never
absolutely.
heard that description. All right, I've got a list of words from my memoir.
Okay.
So I could read a couple of them and then you tell me which definition you'd like to hear, or I could just randomly choose one.
I think we should leave it up to you. You pick one that
Okay.
feels like it would resonate.
Okay. Okay. Well, here's one that came with a lot of learning for me. It's called ticker bomb.
Sticker bomb.
Ticker bomb. So ticker bomb is when you, and this is in the context of let's say an intimate relationship. Um, when you agree that something needs to change, and yet you fail to put a timeline on it, placing you in an indefinite waiting game. So ticker bomb is a word that I created because I felt it would be a really helpful thing to have a reminder of when something comes up in a relationship and it's something that's just not working and you both acknowledge it, but then it persists for years and years and years. And and we could live forever in that state. I mean, I've been in relationships where I lived forever in this like thing that we would just keep circling back to and it wouldn't change. And so it's a word for me that ushers me into knowing truly and being really honest with myself around what are my bottom lines? Like, what is it that I really can no longer do anymore? And to have that honesty. And then if the other person is willing to meet me in that change, great. But what does that look like? And instead of just agreeing that there's a problem, but really coming to an agreement around what does that shift or change look like? And so that, and the important part is so that I'm not putting myself in a position where I'm trying to change myself or change the other person in order to make something work. And I believe we're also deeply conditioned in relationship to make things work.
Yes.
It's such a slippery slope with denying what our real truth is. And so I created the word ticker bomb to remind me that if something is not working, it doesn't need to be a drama or a big deal, or, you know, I don't know, it doesn't even need to be a deal breaker. That's an unknown, right? But being able to have a conversation around what change looks like on one or both people's behalf. If someone needs something, what does that look like for the other person to provide? And then what do we provide each other in order to come to something that feels expanding once again?
Mhm. I love that. What a perfect pick. That is such a
Those
perfect
are like
fit.
the most fun to me. There's ones too, but that one popped out at me.
Well, and when you were describing it, it seems to me like it would be a really good word um to hold yourself accountable and
Yes.
to also like get you out of your loop because we know that our lessons are just going to keep coming back in new forms with new faces, louder each time. So maybe the ticker bomb is like what gets you out of it, right?
Okay, this is the ticker bomb.
I love it. I love it. I'm using that one for sure.
Oh, yes, please do. Please do. My goal is to make a handbook of all of these new words, new definitions. And the working title at this moment is um, a reality check for savvy people in relationships. That was thanks to my
Love
writing
it.
coach, Krista who's genius. And
Oh,
she came up with that suggestion, and I love it.
that is so good. I love it.
Super fun.
Mm.
Yeah, I love what you said. I just want to come back to that before it escapes my mind, is that it's a way of holding ourselves accountable. And I mean, I used to do this too, and I hear a lot of people say, well, you need to hold the other person accountable, but really at the end of the day, it's holding ourselves accountable.
Mhm.
And anything else is just trying to full circle, coming back to control.
Yeah.
Controlling what the other person is or isn't going to do. And then we remain in kind of a victim dynamic of feeling helpless and stuck and not being able to receive what it is that we truly deserve and desire.
Mhm. And that
And
victim stuck mentality is just going to keep you in that low vibe, you know, cycle.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So that was another reason for creating these new definitions in the way that I did, because I wanted it to be a reminder of what do I have power of within
Mm.
me? Like, how can I be accountable to myself? And then everything else is just letting the cookie crumble as it may crumble. And at the end of the day, at least I know I've honored myself and can just keep on growing
Yeah,
in that
that's what it's all about, right? Honoring yourself.
direction.
Mm.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
good. See, this is so soul nourishing. Or what was my other one too? The romantic, nourishingly romantic.
Oh, I just adore that definition or that description.
Mm,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Mm.
Well, I think we could talk for hours, and I really want to learn more about what did you describe it as? The family dynamic,
Yeah, it's the modality is called family constellations.
family constellations. Okay.
And but it does explore the patterns that we are loyal to within our family system that feel so normal and they feel like love, right? Because that's how we've learned to connect, is through those family dynamics from our earliest of earliest ages. And so all of us have that encoding deep within us. And basically, the process is being able to have an outside picture of the dynamic that lives inside of us so that we can gain awareness and clarity around how we're engaging in those patterns in our current life that might not be what we're actually wanting to choose for ourselves. So that we see like there's this, um, there's there's a natural desire to be loyal to our family systems because that's where we experience our sense of belonging, and our initial sense of belonging gives us it's our survival, right? Like we depend on our parents, on our family in order to survive. So it's a really beautiful way to have a doorway into inquiry around how we relate to belonging in the world with our friends, with our partners, lovers, work relationships. And it's such a liberating process because once we see what we've been loyal to, that we've been blind to, like we haven't necessarily understood it, but we know that when we have these moments of inner conflict or outer conflict, it feels familiar. Like it's something so old that feels right in a way because that's all we've ever known.
Like old
And then
programming.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. So it's the what I love about constellation work is that it allows us to see that very clearly outside of ourselves first, and then it's just like waterfalls of awareness start to happen.
Mm.
And the other part that I love about it is that once the awareness is there, there's no work to do.
Mm.
Because once you have the awareness, you just know that you can choose otherwise.
Yeah.
And it doesn't leave you. You have that forever. And yes, you still always need to choose, as we all do, but at least with that clarity, there's the empowerment to be able to choose. So I really love that work for anyone who is interested in moving beyond what they know in terms of relational dynamics in any way and feeling a renewed sense of also support in our lives because all of us relate to our parents who were the ones who gave us life. And if we didn't get what we needed from our parents at a young age, then we also feel like life isn't supporting us.
Mm. Yeah.
So when we can really reorient from a visceral sense in our body that we're not getting what we need and knowing that um, it's not just knowing, but it's realizing that our parents have our back for the simple fact that they have said yes to giving life to us. It
Yeah.
comes down to that one simple truth, and there can be many doorways to open to really embody that. But that one simple truth reframes any sense of feeling we didn't get what we needed because they
Mm.
have said yes to the most fundamental act of giving us life. Without them, we wouldn't be here. Without them saying yes, whether or not, they maybe it was even unexpected or, not foreseen, but without them in their own way saying yes, like you did with your own child of surrendering, embracing that, we wouldn't we wouldn't be here.
Yeah. And then that gives you an opportunity to reframe anything that has happened in your life, I feel like.
Absolutely. In a profound way.
Yeah.
Profound. Yeah. We're no longer at the mercy of feeling we're not getting what we need.
Hmm. And circling back to your sense of belonging with relationships and family members, the belonging to ourselves, I would imagine, is one of the biggest things that's affected.
Absolutely. It's so profound that you would say that. Not surprising in the context of our conversation so far. Um, yes, like the belonging to oneself and knowing that we have our own backs,
Yeah.
feel safety with ourselves, that we can feel safety with our own longings, our longings to belong to the world in a bigger way or in a certain way.
And not assigning meaning to that.
Not assigning meaning to what that means. Yeah.
Hmm.
And that ultimately that is enough. And just to tie it again full circle, that sense of knowing we belong to ourselves allows us to just be, right? It allows us just to relax and be the love that we are, be the light that we are without any efforting, without any trying, without any reaching for, without any, um, even I will say like hypervigilance around spiritual practices or healing practices, or
Yeah.
that can become a thing too. So I love that this notion of having a sense of belonging with ourselves is really the core
Mm.
of it all.
I
Thank you.
just noticed when you say, then we can just be, like every time you've said that, I feel like my shoulders just drop
Oh,
every single time. Like, what a relaxing feeling, what a relaxing statement. We can just be. We don't have to do, we don't have to achieve, we don't have to control. We can just be. And that
be.
can be so hard for people to let go of. I
Mhm.
mean, I know people in their 60s that they they don't know what to do with themselves because they've never just allowed the just being.
Mm.
And when we realize that later in life, it can be so hard to undo.
Yeah.
I feel like now um, the newer generations they don't have that holding them back like we did.
Mm. In what sense? They don't have the doing holding them back,
They
or?
don't have, yeah, I feel like the younger generations are more aware of that, of
Mm.
the ability to just be, the awakening has
Mhm.
hit them earlier in life.
I agree with what I've been seeing too around me. Um, those who I meet in their 20s are like light years beyond what I was in my 20s. And there's so much accessibility to things that I certainly didn't have in my 20s. And my parents certainly didn't even have. I was thinking about for my parents, like the word boundary is foreign to them.
Right?
He was like, you only do that if you're, maybe an alcoholic or something. Like therapy was just, what's the point,
Right.
So
Yeah.
I definitely agree with you about this. Not only the access in a younger generation to be, but there's a lot more access to modalities that allow us or allow and support them to be. And I will also add that they are very challenged at the same time with technology and the way that technology has evolved. So it's really begging of them to be aware in ways that wasn't asked of, me and my generation, not that where I didn't grow up with, computers and iPhones and stuff.
Well,
So,
that's a very good point. Yeah. Um,
it's like
my
more of
kids with their phones. Yeah.
both spectrums, right? And it's
Mhm.
like a big divide. And so power of choice every time,
Mhm.
between the having access to everything, and then there's the contracting side of that, where there's also so much choice and so much distraction and so much pulling away from the being,
Yeah.
so much available at all times.
Very true. Very true.
So, yeah, it's an interesting and exciting um,
Time to be
position to
alive.
be in. I'm in my 50s now, and to be able to witness younger generations in their 20s, and even my nephew, who's 16 now, and he's making choices about how he spends his time. And I just think like there are these timeless truths where we all have a choice in shifting into the being or the doing. And if, in the example of my nephew, he made the choice to get himself off of social media so he'd have more time for his art, where he's made the decision that matters to him. And there's a beingness in that. He would never say that, but I see that,
Yeah.
like he's being himself, doing what he loves,
Oh, that's gorgeous. I love that.
not doing other things. So
Hmm.
it applies no matter what
Hmm.
era or generation we're moving through, the choice between, doing all the time or like shifting into that very simple state of being.
Yeah. Yeah. Juicy.
Such a delight to talk with you.
It is. Like I said, we could talk for hours and we'll have to do another if you're up for it, another episode on um, the family constellations. I'd love to learn more about that. It sounds so
That's great.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's wonderful, wonderful work. Yeah, I love sharing about it.
Will
So
you tell our listeners where to find you?
yes, you can find me on my website. It's KristaKujat.com. That's my birth name. And I have at the moment some free audios of my book. And I created those audios and wanted to make them available for free because I feel they're really a transmission and an invitation to just be without doing anything. And so I really invite all of your listeners to go to my site, download the audios. They're really simple. Each one is maybe 2 minutes long, and you can just listen to it before you go to bed or when you wake up in the morning. And it's just this reminder that there's nothing to do. It's just to
I
be.
love it. I can't wait. I want to listen.
Oh, please do. Yes.
Yeah.
So please feel free to go to my website, and also you can find me on Instagram. If you have questions, please reach out to me. I'm very game to engage through DMs. So you can find me in those two places.
Awesome. And like I said, I so enjoyed your book. And as a reminder, that's called Life's Poetic Glossary, The Humanity of Everyday Words. I highly recommend it. It's better than a bubble bath with a glass of wine and candles.
Oh, what a metaphor.
Mm.
Oh, thank you, Lindsay. It's been such a pleasure.
Yes, you too. Thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure.